Welcome to Something Positive for Positive People. I'm Courtney Brain. Something Positive for Positive People is a podcast at this point interviewing people who are living with herpes or navigating herpes stigma, just about their experiences. We interview people who are newly diagnosed, who've been diagnosed for a while, who might be entering the dating world again or for the first time in a really, really long time, who might be opening their relationships up. But overall, I mean, this podcast gives us insights to how we communicate about our sexual health. So today I'm here with Grace, who is 18. You told me. So let's start with like you reaching out to me. I'm very much impressed with how quickly you were able to connect with me and how willing you were to be on a podcast episode, especially so soon after your diagnosis. You said you've been
Yeah.
diagnosed for 2 months, right?
Yeah, I was diagnosed on March 1st. So it's been like just a little bit over 2 months. Um, yeah.
All right. And just what made you reach out? Let's start there.
Um, I know like I've talked to a lot of other young women who do have herpes, and I've never like seen anybody like advocating or talking openly about having herpes like at such a young age. So I felt like my perspective and my experience could be really helpful for other young people who have just been diagnosed with herpes.
Yeah, I very much appreciate that because I think about, you're half my age. I'm gonna be 35 this year, basically. So to think about where you are in your diagnosis compared to what I was doing at age 18, like
Mm-hmm.
I was such a kid. I was in college playing football and like school was a priority and I was looking forward to being done with school so that I can make money and be an adult,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where are you in just outside of herpes? Like mentally, where are you in life at this point? Like, are you in school? Are you working? What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm a student. I go to college out of state. I'm
I have no
pretty,
idea what out of state means. Like for you, because I don't know where you are, where you go. So
yeah.
share what you comfortable with.
Yeah, so I go to school about 2 hours away from where I'm from.
Okay, there you go.
And um, I'm really involved like at my school. I'm in a sorority. Um, so I have like a lot going on outside of that. I'm a full-time student. I'm majoring in elementary education. So I actually finished this semester with straight A's. So
Congratulations, that's amazing.
thank you.
Is this your first year in college or your second year?
Yep, my first year in college.
All right, congrats. All right.
Mhm.
This is cool because you say you have all this involvement, you're a full-time student, and you were able to get straight A's. How
Mhm.
has your herpes diagnosis, if at all, affected your ability to do your everyday things?
Yeah. So I know when I was first diagnosed, that's when I was going through my first outbreak. So I did miss about 2 weeks of classes. And it really did affect like everything else that I did. Like I wasn't able to go to class and like keep up on my work. Um, I wasn't able to go to sorority meetings and events and stuff like that. So not being able to be involved in stuff like that, like physically and mentally, was really hard for me. Like I was going through all of this at school in my dorm room alone. Like it was pretty rough, but
Hmm.
once I got back into those things, that helped me really like get back to like normal life.
How long did it take for you to get back into normal life? Would it have been the 2 months or some time before that?
Um, well, I knew like from the moment like I noticed symptoms a few days before I even was able to get into the doctor. So like from the time I noticed, I knew exactly what it was, and I kind of started like doing a lot of research then and like finding people that were like advocating for it and like talking about their own experiences and stuff like that. And I knew like from what other people were saying that I didn't want to like let it take a huge toll on me from the beginning because I felt like if I did, then later on I'd be doing all of this work that would be like much more difficult. So, I mean, I kind of tried to get back into things like right away. It
Mhm.
was, it's still hard. It still was hard for a while, but I was able to kind of just keep pushing through it.
Okay. And out of the advocates or resources that you found, what would you say has been most useful, or like what led you to finding me?
So I actually have met like other young women off of like TikTok and stuff. And I actually like made a group chat where we can all talk to each other about it and stuff like that. And one of the girls sent me a podcast, and you were on the podcast, and I was listening to it, and I was like, wow, I really like what he's saying. Like, I kind of want to reach out. So I did.
Oh, I appreciate that. And it was This Podcast Will Kill You, their herpes episode, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, shout out to them. Oh man, they were so amazing to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, love them, love the errands. All right. So you have a group chat with people on TikTok. Like that's how you
Yeah.
found
So
TikTok?
I found them on TikTok, and then I kind of I like befriended each other. Like we'd be on like people's TikTok lives or like TikTok comments and stuff like that. Like I would find like I wasn't seeking it out, but I would see like young girls commenting like I was just diagnosed, like I'm really struggling right now, like stuff like that. And I was like, well, I have a group chat. Like if you want to join, like friend me, and I can add you to it. And I initially made it like when I met people, like I made it as soon as I found out, really, and that really helped me. So I kind of made it as like support. I mean, for each other, but also I was getting a lot of the support.
Okay.
And now I feel like it's kind of like a different role. I'm like really comfortable in my diagnosis, but now I'm like helping girls who aren't as comfortable and
Yeah.
like talking to them about it.
First off, I'm shocked that this happened on TikTok. Like, of all the places, TikTok is the new Instagram. Because I mean, when I started the podcast, it was Instagram for me, and I do not like TikTok. I am very politely stating what I really want to say, but I don't care for TikTok at all. But I recognize how much of a necessity that it is. And it's annoying. But for you, I think about myself that when I was diagnosed at 24, right? It's been 10 years for me, and I had no idea what I needed at 24. It took me until I was 27, 28 years old before I began to actually create the resource that I needed out of necessity. So for you, it kind of sounds like that's the same thing for you. Like you
Mhm.
may not have known what you needed, but in being able to offer support to other people, that's been helpful to you. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think it's almost like healing for me to be like that person that was there for me and help me go through and like learn more about the virus and stuff like that. So I feel like helping others is in a way healing for me, and it makes me feel good.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. Um, I've noticed among other people who have started advocacy shortly after their
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis that maybe this was more of a coping mechanism for them. Like if they help other people with their diagnosis, that then they don't have to deal with their own. So, and my question to you is, do you see any commonality there between, okay, I'm helping other people and avoiding helping myself, or has it genuinely been helpful to you to help other people? If so, then how? Like, how is supporting other people healing for you?
I think that like helping other people is actually helpful for me. Just because like we all talk about our own stuff, we all talk about our own experiences. But being able to like have other people who might have a better understanding of what I'm going through, like with my age or like with my diagnosis, being a woman, like it's just stuff like that that kind of brings us together. So having like a sense of community is really helpful.
You said it. I was leading to that. It is definitely helpful to have a sense of community and people to ground you, not just ground you, but hold you accountable. Like for me, running this nonprofit, running this podcast, yeah, I do it all on my own. But the people who come on as guests, the people who make donations, the people who contribute and say, hey, have you found this thing? Have you seen this? The people who make connections for me, uh, it feels like a community. Now, it's my community and it's kind of like a one on one with a bunch of individuals, but it's
Mhm.
not like the group where we each exchange resources and people are typically within the same realm of how we view stigma and what we view as a solution to where we are at this stage of our diagnosis. I've just not had that. But from a one on one perspective, I very much feel supported and I feel like accountable. Like something positive for positive people would be like the hub slash group, but
Mhm.
individuals are connected to that and then I'm
Right.
connected to that. So it's like I'm pouring
Right.
into something positive and I'm taking from it what it is that I need for my healing, and other people are contributing and taking what they need from their healing. But there's no direct connection of community for myself, and that is probably one of the larger things that I struggle with in
Mhm.
terms of getting the support that I need in order for herpes stigma to be more dissolved than it is in
Yeah.
healthcare settings, in individuals when they're diagnosed. Like the only reason that this doesn't have more of an impact is because of the the hiddenness of that sense of community. Like we know there's a herpes community out there, but
Yeah.
everybody like follows a hashtag rather than actively connects with anyone who is open about their herpes status on a
Right.
page because people don't want for others to make that connection between them and this page. And it sucks because that's the one thing that's in the way, but that's the thing that we need done in order for us to get to a place where this is more, people are more aware of it and it's more accepted.
Hmm. Yeah. I agree.
Oh, I thought you looked like you wanted to say something, but I might have like started saying what you were gonna say already. All right. uh, so tell me what happened. Give me a little bit of background around when you started seeing symptoms and what was going on for you around that time. Relationship status, style,
Mm.
all of that.
So I was single. Um, like I had casual sex. And I have like been having casual sex for a while. Um, so this partner was somebody that I had only like this was the second time I had ever seen them. And exactly 4 days after I had hooked up with this person, I noticed just very small, painless bumps.
I have to ask a question. Did you use a condom?
I did not. No,
Okay, I was just curious.
no, I didn't. But exactly 4 days later is my first ever time having symptoms. And I like noticed them immediately, like before it was painful or anything. And I just kind of knew it was herpes. So um, it really like progressed. Like my symptoms got worse very quickly. Um, so yeah, my first outbreak lasted like almost a month.
Uh huh. I have a few personal questions. You can
Mhm.
feel free to tell me to f off if you don't want to answer them. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. One
Yes.
question is, had you two talked about STI status or testing at all?
So actually, um, before the first time I'd ever had sex with him, he asked me, he's like, well, you get tested, right? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay, so you're not dirty. I was like, no, I'm not dirty. And that's all the conversation was. So,
Mm-hmm. All right, so nothing's changed there. Like more of the responsibility of initiating this conversation
right.
is
Yeah.
like it's gonna be on you because for him it was just like you don't got nothing. All right, cool. I won't get anything. Not oh I might have something. Let me go get tested. But for you that was enough. That was the end of the conversation, right?
Yeah. I really never had conversations like that with people. And I'm not like blaming my sex education, but we weren't really taught to like talk to people about when was the last time you were tested? Like, have you ever tested positive for anything? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I just was never really in the habit of doing that.
Hmm.
Um, and I kind of felt like I was like immune to everything. Like, oh, that won't happen to me.
Oh, to be young again.
Yeah. So
Oh.
I had never really like actually thought about anything like outside of my own world. Like,
Hmm.
oh, nothing will happen to me. Like, I've never had an STD before, just all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely can happen to you if you're having sex. Like, you're not special, you're not immune. Like, it can happen to you.
Yeah. And then how old is he? Okay.
I don't know for sure, but I
Oh,
he goes to my school. I think he's like 22 maybe.
okay. And
I'm not.
the reason that I asked about that is simply because I was wondering about like the quality of the conversation because age wise, I think that it's different from peer to peer, like when you're in
Mhm.
that same age window versus someone who might be more mature enough
Mhm.
to initiate certain aspects of a conversation about it. Um, but that I guess that's it.
Yeah.
How did he respond when you told him? If you told him?
So that's kind of like a complicated question to answer. So,
Ooh, drama.
well, okay, so I can and will probably never know for sure if I was given my HSV from him.
Oh, okay.
Um, mhm. So when I was first diagnosed, I went to, since I'm going to school out of state, I went to like the on campus health place. So I was diagnosed by a nurse practitioner. And she, like, after my diagnosis, I was talking to her and I said to her, when she asked me if I had any questions, I was like, so how do I tell the guy? Um, and she was like, honestly, you don't. And she told me not to tell him and not to have a conversation with him about it. And for a bit, I was like, I don't know. Like, I knew that that didn't sit right with me. Um, but I did take like a week or two to kind of just like get myself together before I really had that conversation with him. Um, so, like, a bit later, like a week or two after my diagnosis, then it was eating me alive. I was like, I have to say something to him. So I messaged him and I told him, like, hey, I was just diagnosed with herpes. My first ever symptoms were 4 days after we had sex. Um, and that was just like all I could even make out of that conversation. And he was like, oh, okay. And then, like, a couple weeks later, I asked him, hey, are you planning on going and getting tested? And he told me no. I sent him like an article from like a trusted source, saying that like most people that have genital herpes don't know that they have it or have symptoms, stuff like that. So I sent that to him. He said, okay, I'll get tested. Then I told him, let me know when your appointment is. Like, kept on dragging out. Then finally I was like, so when is your appointment? He told me it was this day. Then that day, like, I texted him how to go. He told me, I'm never talking to you about this again. I'm about to start dating a girl, so we're not talking about it. And I said to him, I said, well, I I begged him to tell me. He refused. So then I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to let you know now. Like, I really do think you should be honest with her at least, whatever the result was. Um, and he said, don't tell me what to do with my relationship. And that was the last time we ever talked. So I can never know for sure if it was from him, but based on his reaction, like his delayed response with going to get checked, like I can assume, but I can never really know.
I've been making this face ever since you said the nurse practitioner told you not to tell him.
Yeah, I know.
And after hearing what happened, my face stayed the same, but it's because maybe she was right because of how he reacted,
Right.
and it really, I'm speaking to more healthcare providers recently. I've done a lot of interviews. I haven't uploaded any of these as podcasts yet because I want to formulate a narrative here. And what I'm seeing is how stigma shows up from healthcare providers.
Yeah.
And in that case, I don't know that it was ill intended, her
Hmm.
saying, hey, don't tell him.
Yeah.
But that
I
also
don't think
wasn't.
that it was like her medical advice. I just was like, how do I tell him? And she was like, honestly, like if you think that he can't be trusted, if you think that, all this stuff, which she's like, it could be a possibility because it does sound like it's from him. She was like, then I wouldn't tell him.
Mhm. Wow. And I wonder if this will be someone who just goes on to act like it isn't a thing at all and hides it. Because I don't really. Here's the thing. This is very interesting because I hear more from women uh, who found out that the guy they were seeing had been lying about it or just hadn't said anything or who doesn't talk about it. Then I have men who've dated women who don't talk about it. And I don't know that this is necessarily a gendered thing, but I think there's something to be said for personalities
Hmm.
and like a willingness or unwillingness to address this thing because
Right.
so many of the herpes education, awareness, whatever advocates that are out there are women. There's myself, Rich, and Pickering Fitness that I'm aware of who have pages that are open about herpes, and I can think of about 20 to 30 women off the top of my head that I've seen throughout the course of these last 6 years that I've been doing the podcast. And I wonder if that's just what it is, if there's like something about our willingness to put these experiences out there to the world or even just to talk about it because it is a difficult thing to talk about, and that's where the whole stigma comes in, is because stigma will thrive in silence, and so that man is stigmatized in a way that is very unhealthy. It's very self-destructive, and like I think
Yeah.
a lot of men look at women and they're like, "Oh, you got it so easy." Dot dot dot. But it's like actually there are instances where it's not the woman's fault in any way, shape, or form, but it could be like the man's fault in some ways. And I use women and men here because what I'm using this as a generalization
Yeah.
because this is who's dating who. I don't hear from many women who date women or men who date
Yeah.
men. It's more so heterosexual relationships. And
Right.
so this guy who got this, who possibly, I don't want to say in an
Yeah.
absolute, who got this diagnosis will never be blamed by a man for his role in this. It'll be
Right.
women going, oh, it's men like this, or it'll be men being like, women have it easier. You'll be able to date. You'll be fine. But like, if those are the kinds of men that you're dating,
Right.
is it really, easier for you?
I do think that that is like a common um, experience for like a lot of women. Like the girls I've talked to, a lot of them have said like the guy told them that he was going to get tested and it dragged on, never went. They stopped talking, never found out.
Yes, that is a thing. That is fairly
Mm-hmm.
common. And here's where it just kind of becomes more of a burden on the women because now
Right.
like you gotta hold the person that you are wanting to have sex with accountable and say, hey,
Right.
no, you get tested. Like,
Right.
because I remember when I was that age, I didn't get tested because
Mm-hmm.
what makes logical sense is that if I'm having sex with someone who has been tested and hasn't tested positive for anything, and I trust you to be honest with me about that,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm not exposing myself to anything. So if I
Right.
ask every woman, hey, oh, you get tested, you don't have anything, great. if I'm asking y'all this and I'm going down that line of 10 women, I'm probably not the only guy that they're sleeping with. So
Right.
we repeat that cycle enough times, and there's going to be windows and overlaps where, yeah, you might have been tested, but you also might not have symptoms for something, and bam,
Right.
now all of a sudden someone has something, and this is where that communication component comes in,
Mm-hmm.
because you might have, had you known a little bit more about his sexual history, you might have asked more questions. You might have been more hesitant to move forward with him. And this is why something positive for positive people is so important. It's because it teaches these communication skills necessary in order for us to engage in discussions not only about moving forward with someone sexually, but also knowing like how this person might treat you based on the
Mm-hmm.
dialogue exchange. Because if
Right.
you were to ask a few more questions, you probably would have been like, I don't think I want to sleep with this person. Or you might not have if you like that toxic shit, and that's perfectly fine. But that's just a reality that we live in.
Yeah.
But to be able to have the communication skills necessary, you might have been able to um, have had him get tested, and then
Yeah.
this would have been a completely different conversation. He probably would have just ghosted you if he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't able to present you with a negative STI test, or if he didn't want to get tested at all. He's like, oh, this is too much work. I don't want to deal with this.
Right.
And that's where we kind of go back into that avoidance stuff.
Yeah, I just feel like it's really important for people to go and take care of their own sexual health because it affects any person they're sleeping with. But at the same time, like, we can't force anybody to care about themselves or others' sexual health. And it's a hard lesson to learn. It's a hard situation to be in. Um, like, you can assume that you got something from someone. You'll, but if they don't ever get tested, like, there's never going to be maybe that feeling of closure, like complete closure, them saying, I did test positive, I do have it. Um, but I think for a lot of us, that's just kind of part of maybe the experience, like part of the trauma with it. So I don't know, like I can't force him to care about my feelings, future partner's feelings, his own. So
Nope. And that is a okay, because
yeah,
at the end of the day, you taking care of you.
yeah.
He is or
He's
is
out
not.
there doing whatever.
Yeah. Uh, I do want to bring it back to the nurse, because
Mm-hmm.
I have very conflicted feelings about this. Like, yes, she was being a person, and I'm sure she sees on a regular basis like the consequence of someone being, oh my God, he gave me herpes. I think I know who it is. I should tell him. And then she's just like, I don't think that's a good idea because dot dot dot. But also, healthcare providers are the initial touch point of STD prevention as well
Mm-hmm.
as stigma. So you as a patient coming in, you're getting treated, the way that she's communicating with you is going to influence. Like, imagine if you were someone who was like, "Oh my God, I don't want to tell anybody this." "Oh, no, don't worry about it. You don't have to." "Thanks. I'm never going to tell anyone."
Yeah.
And you would have essentially gotten permission from this healthcare provider,
Mm-hmm.
while the context was you don't have to tell this person.
Right.
Someone who's as vulnerable as someone is during a new diagnosis and processing that might have
Mm-hmm.
heard, oh, I don't have to tell anyone because my doctor said it, or this my nurse said
Right.
I don't have to, right? So I want to be very clear here in that, do what you want to do. I don't tell
Yeah.
people what to do, but to think about the majority of people that I talk to don't know where they got the herpes from. They have an
Mm-hmm.
idea, but it's not like they consented to a relationship, moving into it, and then got herpes from the relationship, knowing that the partner knew they had herpes. Like, that's a very rare conversation that I have with people. But for the most part, I think what that speaks to is the quality of a person's mental health as they
Mm-hmm.
go forward into looking for resources if they even need them.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know where you got it from, you probably a little bit more all over the place. And there's so many layers of the shock there and the trauma that occurs that it's completely different than if you do know. I may not talk to
Right.
99.9% of the people who know, because
Mm-hmm.
this was a choice that they made. And I think
Right.
that when we are not empowered, or when we are disempowered by losing our choice, that's when I start to hear from people. And the people that I hear
Mm-hmm.
from are typically in the worst shape, mentally, emotionally, and this is caused by just the misinformation being received or
Yeah.
people's just avoidance of wanting to have hard conversations. And people
Right.
like the guy that you saw, like, because of him, I am not gonna ever run out of people who come in who are newly diagnosed with herpes and
Yeah.
want to talk to me.
Yeah. That is definitely a good point to make. I also do think it's really important that people know, like, a lot of times people are getting it from others that don't disclose, don't know they have it, don't accept that they have it. So I think, like, the hate towards people that do come out and say, yeah, I have herpes, are generally not the ones that are spreading it. And if they are, it's with consent. But going back to the nurse practitioner, I don't think that they had ever really diagnosed anyone with herpes before.
Oh, that is very important information.
Yes. So this was actually, like, I was like probably one of the only people that's ever gone there for this. So this is my school's testing place. I have really bad, like, I don't have a doctor there because I'm going to school out of state. And I also had like a really bad experience with an urgent care, so I knew I wouldn't go there. I knew that wasn't a possibility. So I did go to the on campus, I don't really know what it's called, like the on campus health place.
It's like a
And
clinic, yeah,
I,
university clinic.
right, the university clinic, yes, thank you. So I had already really known I had it, but I was scared, like terrified to actually have to face that, like face somebody telling me, yeah, it's genital herpes. So when I was first, like, I first went in and I talked to the RN, and she was like, kind of just like, she's like, okay, so what's going on? Like, and I told her, I'm having like some weird symptoms. I have bumps, I have sores. And she just looked at me, okay, so you think it's herpes? And I was like, I said to her, I was like, I really need compassion right now. Like, I would really appreciate if I was like receiving, some kindness and respect
Did
from
you say that out
you.
loud?
Yeah. I asked her to, like, respect me, like, not talk to me like that, like, it makes me feel uncomfortable. This is really, like, uncomfortable experience to be going through. And after that, she was like, oh, yeah, I completely understand. Like, and after that, like, her and the nurse practitioner, when I met with them, were really kind to me. Like, they're really mindful, like, oh shit, like, this girl's probably going through it right now. Like, maybe we should have some compassion. So, yeah, then I met with the um, nurse practitioner, and it really wasn't like a bad experience necessarily, like the way I was treated, but the way they went about things was like not okay. So they are like talking to me and stuff, like talking to me about my symptoms, talking about like my last sexual partner, stuff like that. And they're like, okay, so we're gonna do an exam. And I told them before they did the exam, I said, okay, I do want to ask like that I'm not told like it looks like herpes or it is herpes while you're doing an exam on me, because I'm already going to be in like,
Very
you know,
vulnerable space, yeah.
a vulnerable position, a vulnerable space. So being told that while I'm, you know, would make me feel like very down, pretty uncomfortable. And I explained that to them. They respected that, and they did like probably like a 15-10 second exam on me. Then let me get dressed, came back, and they're like, yeah, so it is herpes. And I was never swabbed, I was never tested or anything during this experience. And I know she came back in, the nurse practitioner came back in holding like a bunch of like health, like textbook type things. So from that, I could kind of tell, like, I don't think she's really necessarily experienced this before. She, doesn't probably know much about it. Um, so I should probably get like a second opinion, stuff like that. Um, and she told me like I'm gonna have to have a C-section when I have kids. all this stuff. And I said to her, I was like, but I would only need a C-section if I had an outbreak, right? And she told me no. So that's when I started crying. That's when it was bad. But yeah,
You must go to school in the South. I'm going to just assume that it's a southern state. That is my assumption. You don't have to tell me if I'm wrong. I'm riding it out. um, this really makes me think that talking to like college campus clinicians is something in my foreseeable future. I don't know
mm-hmm.
exactly what that looks like because like colleges don't want to pay somebody to come in and talk about sex. Like sex is clearly happening on college campuses. But the
Yeah,
way that this the way that this was handled, they absolutely need practice taking a sexual history. And
yeah,
my whole thought process was, all right, I want to do this for every healthcare provider and organization, like give them
mm-hmm.
practice taking a sexual history, but you know, maybe going to where, there's most likely to be um, more of a need for it. Where
Right,
are there communities of people who are having sex and multiple partners, and there's just like a constant flow of that on college campuses, and people are going to
right,
see these healthcare providers, and it would be nice if people who are younger were able to access some
yeah,
genuine, good resources so that when they do
right,
go out into the world later, they're able to not have so much internalized stigma themselves.
right.
Um, and then support group wise, like I know you're doing TikTok, like group text or whatever. Are you open to or willing to potentially do something like for your sorority or for your college campus to put on something like a support group that is for a much larger audience?
I definitely feel drawn to doing that. I know that I really want to be able to like help people with their herpes diagnosis. But I don't know. Like right now, I think that scares me a lot just because like being so open about it. I don't care about like how my friends view me, how strangers view me, stuff like that. But my family, I don't know if they really I don't know how my family would really react to that. I know my mom knows and she, like respects me, but it's kind of something that like we don't talk about.
Yeah. Well, that's something I would be absolutely glad to help with. I'm sure I'd be able to like get resources and connections or
Yeah.
funding for something like that. If you want to do like a college support group for, and it doesn't even have to have herpes associated with it.
Yeah.
If there's somebody that we can talk to together and like I can say, hey, this is what I do, and this could be more about sexual health communication. I'm sure there might be like an outreach or consent or sexual assault type organization on your
Yeah.
campus. It would be like those kinds of people. Like I'm happy
Right.
to support people in learning how to talk about their sexual
Mm-hmm.
health and navigate. Like what I do is the Stars Talk. One of my board members, Dr. Eveline Dacker, created, and we're finding that it's more than just useful for adults having sex, but also teaching youth about sex and guiding them along the process of not only talking about sex and sexual health, but also their boundaries, their relationship intentions, and how to have healthy relationships and being able to identify abuse. So these are all very much things that something positive for positive people can support you
Mm-hmm.
in, and you don't have to say, hey, I have herpes and this is what I'm
Right.
here for. Like if that's something you feel called to do, absolutely go for it.
Yeah.
But um, overall, like this is you're supporting a sexual health communications resource by sharing your
Mm-hmm.
experience, and then if you want to do this, offering support, then by all means, like I'm absolutely happy to support you in that.
Mm-hmm. I would appreciate that a lot, actually. That definitely interests me. So we should talk about that
Okay, perfect.
after this.
Uh-oh, something positive for positive people coming to a college near you, baby. Uh, I kind of envision something like that for myself, like not necessarily
Right.
living in one place, but like just traveling around and doing
Yeah.
herpes, I guess, related stuff. But more on the medical side now. But if I can like let this support group type thing for people in person
Right.
who are genuinely passionate about it. Like I would love to be able to support herpes education awareness advocates, and I think wow, I'm going into a call right after our interview actually that
Mm-hmm.
I might be able to present this in. So let me write that down before, yeah. Oh shit. It is like divine timing of things that's been happening lately. Like between you reaching out to me, what was that, yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I scheduled this call a couple of days ago, and then you reached out to me yesterday. We're doing the interview today. This is
Mm-hmm.
like just magically happening. So, thank that dude for putting
Yeah.
us in
Thank
this
you for giving me
situation,
herpes.
right? Because I mean, yeah, like not to say nobody wants herpes. Like I can be real
Yeah.
about that. But for this to have, for you to have had the response that you have, like I'm actually shocked. Like I'm very impressed. I'm very much appreciative of you being willing to reach out and share your
Yeah.
experience, and also spark up this idea for talking
Yeah.
to clinicians at colleges.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess like before I just keep rambling, is there anything that you want to be sure to say? Are there any questions that you have for me before we start to wrap this up?
Um, I don't really think so.
All
I
right.
can't really think of anything.
Okay. Well, we will absolutely stay in touch. I'm very much looking forward to potentially working with you on this, and whatever we need to do to get the ball rolling, I'm here.
Perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah, thank you. You can stick around for a little bit, and we can talk a little bit after. I'll go ahead and close this
Okay.
out. That concludes this episode of Something Positive for Positive People. Please like, rate, review, share, subscribe to, and donate to this organization. As you just heard, we're really being heavier on the sexual health communications component. I do believe that integrating our lived experiences after a diagnosis into STD prevention efforts is going to be the way that we begin to destigmatize STIs and getting STIs in general, while also equipping ourselves with enough communication tools to have healthy conversations about relationships, dating, long term, short term sexual goals, as well as STI status and testing. So this is really useful, and while we're not offering therapy anymore, I still have the connections I have, and I would be able to recommend a therapist to you if you are seeking someone who is able to speak the language of someone who has been newly diagnosed with herpes. All right, I'll catch y'all next time. Thanks.